absolutely. Well, let's get to what you've written. You've written a book, Diabolical, How Pope Francis Has Betrayed Clerical Abuse Victims Like Me, meaning you, and why he has to go. Now, for official things, we have publicly issued a Vortex, published a Vortex, I think it was 3 or 4 months ago, sort of in the middle of the summer of shame stuff, and said Pope Francis should resign. We're not going to get into the whole theological stuff, whether he should or whatever, but we just said, look, his handling of this is destroying and eroding trust of lay people and people who are not Catholic, who might look at the Catholic Church to convert to,
okay, so we
as
have
long
found
as he
something
continues
we disagree
to do
on.
this. Okay, go ahead.
We have found something we disagree on, because my book leaves that open-ended. The reason being, for 2 popes to resign in a row. One resignation per 500 years is probably enough. For 2 popes to resign in a row would set a precedent. It would fatally and permanently damage the institution of the papacy. This is the problem with Francis. This is why I think we have to endure him until he pops his clogs. Because if it is assumed that popes will no longer die in office going forward, what happens to the College of Cardinals is it becomes just like any other parliament, which means you'll have parties, even though they're unofficial because it's technically against whatever. There'll be parties, there'll be opposition research. And not just that, but when you've got a pope in who is identified as being from one faction or another, cardinals who don't agree with his positions, whether it's to do with, scripture or church teaching, whatever it is, will be incentivized to make his life hell. Because they know that if they make his life miserable enough, he'll quit like the last 2. So as odious and terrible as this man is, and I barely believe the words are toppling out of my mouth as a Catholic talking about the Pope like this, but I think a lot of us find ourselves in this situation at the moment, sort of saying things about Francis and going, as awful as it feels to say that, and as terrible a situation as we're in, I think we're in a bind, because if you do revere the institution of the papacy and you do believe that this monarchical model, this appointment for life, is the best way to organize the Vatican, and I guess that's a question, because it's one of the only, I think, 2 or 3 surviving government systems of its kind. Mm-hmm. If you think that this is the best way to run the church, and it's a pretty dramatic thing to say you want to change that, you can't force him out, because it means that when our guy's in next, they'll make his life hell and he'll resign too, and suddenly the papacy becomes not even like a president, less than that, it becomes being like a prime minister. It becomes, a temporary political appointment. Mm-hmm. And I just, as awful as this man is, I think the way to do this is to bully and pressure him by cutting off his finances and by ruining his public reputation, to manipulate and bully him into doing the right thing if he won't do it by himself, rather than forcing him to resign. I'm glad we found something to disagree with.
So it makes good TV, right? Well, Milo, you're wrong.
I'm wrong. Do you want the papacy to be like prime ministerships where they're sort of in for 8 years? It's like, you know what, I give up, I quit. Then you're going to end up with like 14 Pope emeriti.
It's the papal retirement club there in the Vatican Gardens.
No, for real. And who's going to have to pay for it? The laity. We've got all these this is reproducing something like the French presidency, which is elected but not for life, carries all the trappings of monarchy, costs as much as monarchy, right. And then when you retire, the costs don't end. You've got all these ex-presidents sitting around costing billions. Do we want this from popes? Do we want like a bunch of popes sitting around, ex-popes? And do we want the situation that we have, in politics where former presidents are weighing in on the actions of current presidents? I think that would be catastrophic for people's faith in the institution.
Sure. No, those are valid points. Let's shift gears if we can now get to
You didn't tell me why I'm wrong, which makes me think I've slightly persuaded you.
No, not at all. We just have a set amount of time.
Fine.
We interrupt our program to bring you a special broadcast.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to an all-new year of Mic'd Up with new guests, bringing you some of the best interviews in the Catholic media world. This is our first show of 2019, and it's guaranteed to be nothing less than enthralling. There's a word for you, enthralling. We hope you're having a blessed Christmas season and New Year. We're coming to you from the Church Militant Studios right here on the edge of Detroit in the Archdiocese of Detroit. You know, they're very fond of us here. The Homo Mafia is out of the closet. Faithful Catholics who've been in the seminary, and many of them having left, saw firsthand the rampant homosexuality going on there for decades. But now, some of it has been made public in the summer revelations. We call it the Summer of Shame of former Cardinal Theodore McCarrick's open homosexuality, homosexual predation, and sexual abuse of priests and seminarians. What's even worse is the testimony of Archbishop Carlo Vigano, the ex-papal ambassador for the United States, revealing that Pope Francis knew all about McCarrick's decades of homosexual predation and put him back into active service, letting him inflict more damage in the church. Many, many more people, more victims, however, are speaking out about the abuse they've suffered at the hands of their spiritual fathers.
Am I the reason you get stoned every week now? Build up integrity, got you texting, emailing me, wanting me to feel with you. Baby, just face reality, move on.
Sometimes it's hard to face reality.